The NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's $300 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. 21 plus in present and select states. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hello, Beat Check listeners. This is Shane Dixon Kavanaugh, Portland City Hall reporter for the Oregonian Oregon Live, and your host today. A housing, homelessness, and behavioral health crisis, flagging student test scores, billions of dollars needed for road and bridge repairs. Oregon legislative leaders will kick off their 2025 session this week at the Capitol with no shortage of significant challenges to tackle and tame. And while Democrats and Republicans say right now that they share a focus on other key areas of concern, such as making life more affordable for Oregonians and greater accountability of state government, the finer details around those common goals could prove divisive in the coming months. Joining me today is state politics and government reporter Sami to give us a Salem legislative preview. Sami, thanks so much for hanging out with me for a few minutes today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Shane.
It's always a pleasure. And your days, nights, and weekends, I think, are going to start getting a little busy with the start of the Oregon legislative session. Is that correct?
Yes, we are gearing up for a start, although I've heard people say that the 6-month session is a little bit less of a whirlwind than the short session. So we'll see how busy it is in the first few months.
Well, I wish you all the best and safe travels to and from between Portland and Salem, and that you are maybe able to get a decent night's sleep as well occasionally. So I wanted to start by just sort of asking you. I mean, there's many issues that our state lawmakers and the governor are looking to tackle here in the coming months. But I wanted to ask you kind of, what are you particularly interested in following and will be paying particularly close attention to down in Salem?
Yeah, that's a good question. Listen, I think many of the priorities this session are going to be an extension of the priority areas that we've seen Governor Tina Kotek focus on in the last couple of years. Certainly, housing and homelessness are going to be at the top of the agenda, continually working on solutions to build more affordable housing in Oregon and continue to decrease the number of unhoused folks on our streets. The things that I am really interested in watching this year includes some of the new items, right? There's a transportation package that we expect to be a huge point of discussion this year. In the past, Oregon lawmakers have allocated billions to fund big, exciting new road projects. The expansion of I-5 at the Rose Quarter was something they funded, for example, in 2017. Of course, that still hasn't happened. But this year, when they come together and look at a transportation package, they're going to try and solve the issue of Oregon's kind of crumbling infrastructure and how to better fund transportation as a whole. Mm-hmm. And then another exciting thing I think that's coming up this year is the question of how to better fund wildfire prevention and suppression. This was the subject of a very quick special session in December because Oregon ran out of money to pay its bills for a record wildfire season last year. This year, lawmakers are going to have to come to solve the question of how are we going to do a better job paying for wildfires moving forward so that we're not strapped on cash every single year.
Mm-hmm. And so let's talk about housing and homelessness just for a moment here. As you mentioned, this has been priority number one for Governor Kotek since she's been in office. This is the beginning of her third year, halfway through her 4-year term. And I am just wondering what needs to happen this year at this session for us as Oregonians and state residents to potentially see meaningful progress on these two seemingly intractable issues?
Yeah, I think I wish I had a better answer for that. I think we're gonna see Kotek really double down, and the lawmakers really double down on doing a lot of the same things they were doing last session, trying to fund more affordable housing, try and expand developments in Oregon. Yesterday, giving journalists a preview of the session, Governor Kotek talked a lot about trying to build more mid-range housing, so duplexes, triplexes, quads, the kind of housing that is more affordable for first-time home buyers to purchase. So I think we're going to see a focus in those areas.
Got it. And I know we at the Oregonian have reported on housing production both in the Portland region and throughout the state. And our colleague Jonathan Bach has pointed out and indicated multiple times that despite laying out some very ambitious goals for sort of turbocharging the number of houses and units that are being built across Oregon, that already we're really struggling to reach those goals and targets. Is that something that the governor has been talking about in recent weeks? Is this something that she's addressing with reporters in these types of news briefings and sessions? I'm just curious sort of how she's thinking about already kind of being behind.
I haven't heard a lot of frank discussion about, Oregon is not yet meeting its targets. What I have heard is Democrats in the legislature say, listen, we're going to keep doing whatever we can to buckle down on housing this year to help the governor meet her housing production goals. Mm-hmm. And, housing, I would say, across the aisle in both chambers is a major point of focus. Senator Daniel Bonham yesterday, who is the Senate Republican leader, said people in his district, this is their top issue. And, he said he has parents and grandparents asking him, do I need to remodel my house so my kids and my grandkids can move back in when they can't find housing?
And let's talk for a moment now about this massive transportation package that lawmakers are going to attempt to tackle and shepherd to the finish line. What are going to be sort of the key decision points and trade-offs potentially here to actually get something that everybody can agree on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big question is going to be, how do we fund this? Yesterday, or I should say last Thursday, lawmakers and the governor gave reporters a bit of a preview of the session, and there was already some dispute, I think, between Republicans and Democrats about how to look at paying for this moving forward. The folks I've talked to who are working on crafting this plan are really clear that they're going to need to kind of rework the transportation system to find a way to generate funding so that road maintenance and operation kind of pays for itself going forward, and lawmakers are not trying to solve this issue every 5 or 10 years. There are discussions about perhaps raising Oregon's gas tax and then phasing it out for a different approach. That could be road user fees when people, pay for how many miles they've driven on Oregon's roads, and that kind of depends on the weight of their vehicle. There's a lot of details to be worked out. Nobody knows exactly how this should be paid for yet. But certainly there's been discussion of, how can we adjust fees and taxes to make the funding more sustainable? I think we heard pretty loud and clear from Republicans this week that they don't want any more taxes and fees on Oregonians. Senator Bonham again brought up the thought that perhaps the general fund should pay for this. Democrats have said pretty clearly that that's not really on the table. Bonham and House Republican leader Christine Drazan, made a point that Oregon's budget has basically doubled in the last decade, and why can't we use general fund money to pay for this when Oregonians are strapped? So that is going to be the knockdown drag out fight, is how do we pay for this?
And pivoting from that, what are lawmakers looking to do this year on the many challenges the state is facing around our K through 12 education?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think, again, in both chambers and across the aisle, we see a focus on education and trying to improve outcomes for Oregon children. We heard from the governor and from House Speaker Julie Fahey this week that while there's definitely going to be a focus this session on kind of reworking the K-12 funding formula to better fund Oregon schools, and our dear colleague Julia Silverman has done some really ace reporting on this that our readers can go check out, the Democrats have been pretty clear that they don't want to just give that money without more accountability. The details of what accountability means are still pretty fuzzy. I think we will see that develop a little bit as we start reading lawmakers' proposals in this area. But already we've heard Speaker Fahey in particular talk about, the schools that are struggling the most in Oregon should be required to accept state help to kind of turn their outcomes around. Again, this emerged a little bit as a point of contention with Republican Christine Drazan, who says, listen, why would we double down on government if government isn't working for these kids? Let's do more to support the children and their families. So we might see some tension around how to best address improving K-12 outcomes, though I think that broad goal is pretty universal.
And while on the topic of accountability, you reported recently, as lawmakers were gearing up to convene in Salem, that Republicans and Democrats were both indicating sort of a shared set of priorities built around these broader themes. Accountability, one of them; affordability is another. And I was wondering if you could talk just a little bit more about what are both parties and the party leaders saying specifically, within these categories, which clearly are things that are of great importance to Oregonians, regardless of their sort of political leanings and affiliation. And also we can talk about these big categories, but like, what does that actually look like? And how does that materialize, at least within sort of the, visions and frameworks of the, of leaders in Salem?
Mm-hmm. I was really interested to hear this question of how Oregon lawmakers want to double down on accountability. I think this was a discussion that was really being driven by House leaders. Democratic House Leader Ben Bowman of Tigard in particular has said that the House is going to put more of a focus this year on holding agencies accountable for delivering on, some of the laws that lawmakers have already passed. He said that leaders of House committees have been trained on, the oversight function of their responsibilities as lawmakers. He said that House lawmakers will be paying closer attention, I think, to Secretary of State audits, which come with recommendations for how agencies need to fix their problems. And he also hinted that he's hoping that there might be some kind of oversight hearings for agencies. I don't know exactly what that would look like. He said that would go a little bit beyond the kind of informational hearings they have in Salem already, which can be kind of hour-long discussions of here's our agency, here's what we do. And they're generally pretty tame. So I think the oversight hearings would perhaps be an opportunity for more scrutiny and some more intense questioning. Though Bowman was pretty clear he's trying to stay away from kind of DC style partisan oversight hearings that I'm sure that we've all become familiar with in the last handful of years. So it'll be interesting to see the House in particular lean into this. Republican leader Christine Drazan really applauded this and She named a couple of agencies that she'd like to see more scrutiny of, and she certainly has not been hesitant to bring up the question of looking at how the Department of Transportation, for example, is funding maintenance and operations when it is asking for a whole bunch more money this year. So we could see certainly more agency scrutiny, and I will be interested to watch how that process unfolds.
And on the affordability front, what are lawmakers talking about right now specifically? What were some of the issues, ideas, or areas that they're looking to potentially bring down costs for people across the state?
Yeah, this one's tricky. I mean, I do think that we heard a bunch of lawmakers say, when I went to knock doors during this campaign cycle, the number one question on voters' minds is affordability. That makes sense, I think, to all of us. Look at egg prices. The question is, what can state lawmakers really do about it? I mean, there are a whole lot of things that they're not going to be able to fix because they, have to do with national or market factors out of their control. We did hear some specifics yesterday, or in the media preview with reporters. House Speaker Julie Fahey talks particularly about trying to reduce housing costs, making sure that prescription drugs are more affordable and that Oregonians can access affordable health care. And then she also talked about keeping utility costs in check. So those are three areas that we'll be watching to see if lawmakers can actually move the needle on affordability for Oregonians.
And Sami, any final thoughts for listeners to consider as this whole big show gets underway?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was interested yesterday to see some of the dynamic play out between Republican and Democrat leaders in the different chambers. As perhaps we expect, everybody said that they are eager to work with one another across the aisle. They see a lot of opportunity for that. I do think, though, that we're already seeing difference of opinion on how things get funded. So it's good for our readers to keep in mind that Democrats have a supermajority this year, which technically means that they could force issues through without Republican support if all Democrats line up behind them. So we will see if there is a true focus on generating bipartisan support for some of these issues that could be more contentious.
Sami Edge, thanks so much.
Thank you, Shane.
Thanks so much for listening to Beat Check with the Oregonian. If you like this show, give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps people find the show. And tell a friend. Help spread the word. The best way to support our journalism and stories like this one is with a subscription to the Oregonian Oregon Live. You can do that at OregonLive.com/podsupport. Until next time,